Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us here at the State Control Centre. I'm here with Emergency Management Commissioner Andrew Crisp, Brigadier Matt Burr and Michael Efron, Senior Meteorologist from the Bureau. I've got a few updates and announcements to make in relation to grants and support, and then we'll throw to Michael will go next to give us a forecast, and then Andrew and the Brigadier will take us through the sterling efforts that ADF are putting in right across flood-affected communities. We'll also be back tomorrow with further announcements and additional support for different sectors. Work's underway across the board. I think there'll be many days of this to come. Now, while some locations are beginning their recovery, clean-up and repair efforts, and we've also announced, as you know, the first stage of support to help with that, there is more rain on its way by the end of the week, particularly for northern Victoria, and that'll see renewed water rising and flooding, potentially not exceeding the peaks we saw over the weekend, but still very significant challenges. To that end, though, we'll hear more from Michael with the forecast. I wanted to go through a number of important decisions that the government's made to support those who've been hardest hit, so I'll just run through those as quickly as I can. First of all, we've got 81 schools that are closed and 59 early childhood facilities that remain closed as a result of flooding. I know this is a very distressing time and will be really difficult for families in our worst affected areas, particularly families with school-aged kids. Today we're stepping in to both provide help for vital early childhood education services, so kinder, helping them to recover and helping families with kinder-aged children. Those early years are critically important and we are going to support those families. So all families who have been directly affected by the floods will be able to send their 3 and 4-year-olds to kinder for free for term 4. Monies that have been paid will be refunded. Monies that have not yet been paid will not have to be paid. That's to sessional kindergarten. As you know, 3 and 4-year-old kinder becomes free from 1 January next year. This just effectively brings that forward for those families that have been directly impacted. We're also going to provide some $2 million in grants for sessional kinder services that have been damaged, either by flooding or this weather event in a broader context. So where they're not covered by insurance, where they've got work that has to be done, clean up and repair, those grants will be made available to each and every one of those sessional kinders across flood-affected communities. They are very special places and they're critically important to the development of our smallest Victorians, and these are practical steps we can take to support them at a very difficult time. To the other end of the educational spectrum, our VCE students, who've already been incredibly resilient over these last couple of years, lots of disruption, lots of challenge. They've done a great job, but this is a fresh challenge for them to face. We're going to make sure that the only thing that contributes to your final score, to your ATAR, is your hard work, your determination, your resilience, not those difficulties that you're facing right now. So a derived examination score for students who've been directly affected will be used if that is deemed appropriate. We've got a little bit of time to run, but obviously it's going to be incredibly difficult for students who can't be at home, and they can't remote learn either because teachers are being flood affected as well. Schools have been flood affected, as I said before, more than 80 of them closed. The automatic application of that derived examination score will mean that students are not disadvantaged as they seek to complete their VCE and then move into whether it be university, TAFE or employment. We'll also work with schools who will identify those students to which this applies in relation to those derived scores, and it means that your result will reflect your level of achievement, your hard work, your skill, not these challenges that you're facing right now, you and your family. It'll be an anxious time for many VCE students, so we've also set up a dedicated hotline for you to get any support that you need. It's open daily from 8 a.m. until 10:30 p.m. and I'd be indebted to you guys if you can help us get this number out, 1800 717 588 or 2022 VCE at education.vic.gov.au. Now, as well as supporting our schools and our early childhood education sector, there's some really basic and simple things that we need to step in and do to support so many different communities with the provision of food. Food supply chains have been disrupted, food production indeed has been disrupted in many parts of the state, and we don't want anyone to be going without those basics, those absolute essentials, particularly at a challenging time like this. So I'm very pleased to be able to announce that the government's approved $5.5 million, a package of food relief to get extra food to communities who need it most. The package includes funding for Food Bank Victoria, Oz Harvest, Second Bite and Fair Share. Absolutely amazing groups who do such important work. This is about giving them the direct support that they'll need to rise to this challenge. There's also grants for neighbourhood houses, regional food hubs and multicultural food providers, acknowledging of course that for many of these communities that are flood affected, they are very diverse communities. It's a great strength of those local communities, but they're very multicultural, and we need to make sure that we're catering for everybody who's been impacted by this event. As part of this package, we'll also provide $1 million for the Shepparton Food Share to help them move into a new food relief hub and warehouse. Their current premises was inundated by floodwater. Throughout these floods, we've seen the very best of the Victorian spirit, people doing whatever they can to help, people pitching in, doing quite extraordinary things. In response to many generous offers of support, the State Control Centre will partner with Disaster Relief Australia to coordinate that volunteer effort, so that we're all making the best use of all of those very generous offers of support. Not-for-profit donation service GIVIT, G-I-V-I-T, which supports communities across Australia affected by fire and flood. They'll act as a central point for financial donations. Victorians who want to contribute can visit GIVIT, givit.org.au. So that's about coordination as well as making sure that as much of that support gets on the ground and supports people who need it most. Very quickly, in terms of a broader flood update, we've got 12 relief centres open, providing shelter, food and basic supplies to communities in need. Details of those are on the Vic Emergency website. We've got 13 aircraft in the air today, including 2 Taipan military choppers, and the Brigadier will speak to that and other assets that are coming to our support soon. They're surveying damage, and they're also getting critical cargo and supplies to communities who've been isolated. There's also 55 sandbag collection points across the state. We continue to have thousands of volunteer and career emergency services staff on the ground working around the clock to support affected communities. I know that every Victorian is grateful, and on behalf of every Victorian can I thank everyone in our emergency services family for the amazing contribution that they are making. And indeed, many people who don't necessarily wear a uniform, but they're there supporting their neighbours, their friends. It's deeply impressive, and we're so proud of you and grateful to you for the work that you're doing, putting in extraordinary hours. On roads, we still have 384 roads closed. That does change hourly, but that was my last update. We've now found and fixed more than 25,000 potholes. I do make the point that that's all flood damage. Some of that work we may have to go back and do again. This is emergency flood repair to try and get key access routes for freight and for emergency services open as fast as possible. That number will continue to grow. Our road maintenance, those emergency crews are literally working 24/7, and they're doing a fantastic job, and we're very grateful to all of them. That has meant that 201 roads have been reopened since the beginning of these floods to keep communities safe and to make sure they can get in and out and get all the things that they need. There are around 1,500 properties statewide, mostly around the Mooroopna area, that are still without power today due to the substation being de-energised from flooding. I was just in Shepparton with Andrew and with the Brigadier, and I was talking to some of the Power Corps staff there who are working very hard to try and reconnect that community. That'll happen as soon as possible. We've got generators out there reducing the number of households without power, but that is a critical challenge, that Mooroopna issue, and rest assured many people are working on that. In terms of emergency payments, which I've spoken to you about numerous times now, we now have 14,729 applications that have been made, and we're working as hard as we can to have those paid out as fast as possible. Just a quick reminder to those who are watching or listening and need support, there are those emergency payments I just mentioned for those who can't return home. You can access those payments at emergencypayments.dffh.vic.gov.au, or if internet's a challenge in your area, you can call 1800 226 226. Those payments are up to just over $2,000 for eligible families who are out of their property because of the flood event. And as I said, there's going on to 15,000 people who have applied for that grant. The Emergency Re-establishment Assistance Fund also provides support of up to $42,250 for families whose properties have been hardest hit. The Commonwealth Government has also, through its disaster recovery allowance and disaster recovery payments, they are available as well. They've made the relevant decisions and the relevant declarations to make those payments available. my.gov.au is the place to go for information and application for those payments. We have put in place caseworkers to help individuals and communities, but particularly at that one-on-one level, those who need housing, health, wellbeing, financial and legal counselling, how to access grants, how to navigate through what can be, despite all of our best efforts, a daunting and challenging process, particularly at a very stressful time. We'll continue to have community recovery officers stationed in all of those affected local government areas to help identify needs on the ground, what's needed, and then to act quickly to meet those needs. The Victorian Flood Recovery Management Plan has been set up to deliver immediate clean-up activities in those worst affected areas, and it's good to see that rubbish is being collected. That clean-up is well and truly underway. And of course, yesterday we announced that we will waive waste levy for flood waste in flood-affected local areas. That's landfill levy as well as the gate fees that would normally be paid. Those councils that are hardest hit, they also have that $500,000 payment to each of them through the Council Flood Support Fund. So I know there's a lot in that, but this presents in many different ways. We need to be targeted, we need to be focused on each of those areas, and we have been. This will not be the last of the announcements that we make. We'll be back here tomorrow to make further announcements as well. Can I, just in terms of the coming days, I think flood-affected communities know this, but for the broader Victorian community, this is far from over. We are going to see more rain. We've still got many thousands of people who are in their homes. Their homes are full of water. Others who can't go back because they've left and they're now cut off from their home. This is a very, very challenging time. There are still warnings that are in place. There's still some very serious challenges for us to rise to over these coming days. Please don't drive through floodwater. Please don't drive through floodwater. It just means we've got to send crews to rescue you. It's dangerous for you, dangerous for them, and it means those crews are having to attend to something that was preventable as opposed to providing
I am your love. You are my heart. I am your strength. You are my love.
As we head into Wednesday, we will start to see further shower and thunderstorm activity developing over the northern parts of the Mallee, so the rest of the state will stay dry, but in that Mallee region we could see severe thunderstorms throughout Wednesday afternoon and evening. Heavy rainfall the main risk with that activity. And then on Thursday we do see that activity extending further south, so it could impact areas near and north of the Dividing Range. The rainfall with that activity not as heavy or widespread as what we saw last week, but still thunderstorms around, so we could see localised heavy falls up to 50 millimetres. Those sort of amounts could lead to flash flooding, but also lead to river rises as well. And then on Friday we actually see that activity extending to all parts of the state, with a particular focus across northeastern Victoria. So a further 5 to 15 millimetres across the state on Friday, but the northeast could see up to 50, in particular with thunderstorm activity. And then heading into the weekend, once again further showers and storms across eastern parts of the state. And then looking further ahead Sunday into Monday, it looks like another low pressure system will develop over the southeast of the continent, bringing a broader rain and thunderstorm event to our part of the world. So that's a system that we're watching very closely as we head into next week. And then more broadly, we are still in a La Nina and a negative Indian Ocean dipole event. So those conditions are leading to above average rainfall across much of eastern, southeastern Australia. We're not expecting those events to break down until late spring into the early part of summer. So still some time before we see these conditions easing. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Andrew Chris, Emergency Management Commissioner. Well, at this point in time, we're actually in all phases of an emergency. So if we want to talk about response, well and truly in the response phase at the moment, given that we have evacuate now notices out for Bunbartha, for Barmah, and for Echuca itself. So Barmah is the new one to be added to that particular list, which highlights and reflects the water as it's moving toward the Murray. Some good news though in relation to Charlton. It no longer has the evacuate now notice up, but it's now moved back to a watch and act. And I really want to make a point when it comes to our messaging and our warnings. A watch and act, it means exactly that. Just because you're not getting an evacuate now notice, the watch and act is important. It's warning you about what's likely to come, and it's giving you instructions and directions about what you should be doing. So that's very much part of the response. And the response is also about what's coming up. And we know that we're on the Loddon River, we're preparing for what's going to be happening up at Kerrang, where we know that community could be isolated for 1 to 2 weeks. It is also about what we're doing in relief, and there are relief centres established across the state. A lot of people are achieving relief by going to family and friends, but we know that up in the Shepparton and Tatura, those relief centres, we've got nearly 700 or 800 people that are being well looked after by all our services. But it is really the preparedness piece that I want to focus on because of the weather that Michael's just spoken to. So there is going to be risk in our state from the middle of the week onwards, and we've heard through till Sunday and Monday. So it's an opportunity now for communities that have not been impacted. If you are likely to be impacted, those key messages again. Download that Vic Emergency app. You need to know how to access good information to make good decisions. And I want to thank our emergency broadcasters who do an incredible job in support of us and keeping our communities safe. If you can, then make sure, please, that you bring into your home food, water, medication, so in the event that you're isolated, you can look after yourself for a minimum of 72 hours. I know what our emergency services are doing, and we've talked about for a number of days the number of aircraft that we've got working in support of communities, the vast numbers of emergency services out there working, doing the great job that they're doing. But this is very much a shared responsibility, as it is with all emergencies. We will do our bit, but what are you doing to support yourself and help the broader community? There are, again, these key messages, and we will keep saying it because we should keep saying it. There's actually been, since this event started, more than 700 flood rescues. There's been more than 7,000 requests for assistance. So 10% of the work of the SES and our emergency services has been rescuing people in situations that were very much preventable. So please, let's not distract our emergency services from what they should be doing. Our services are doing an incredible job. They really, really are. But at times, and we've been very focused on additional support. So I want to thank my counterparts and colleagues from Queensland and South Australia. From Queensland, we'll be getting some additional boat crews, and from South Australia with some swiftwater rescue crews. They'll be on the ground Thursday morning again as we prepare for the next weather event coming through. So please think about what more you can be doing, and I just implore you again, download that Vic Emergency app. So much information is there that will enable you to make good decisions. Part of our preparation is obviously the engagement with the Australian Defence Force. They've been engaged virtually from day one, deploying from local barracks. We've submitted a request for assistance a few days ago where we were provided with 60 ADF resources, including a number of planners and logisticians that have been supporting us here at the State Control Centre. Additional request has gone in for further support, but I'll let Brigadier Matthew Burr speak to that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Commissioner. Thanks very much, Premier. My name's Brigadier Matt Burr. I'm the Commander of the ADF forces deployed here to Victoria to assist in the flood response. As the Commissioner has stated, the ADF have been on the ground since late last week, and at the request of the state government and certainly in supporting of state agencies, those ADF forces have been assisting a lot of communities right throughout the impacted area over the last week and going into this week. The locations that the ADF have been involved in have been the Greater Shepparton region, Shepparton itself, Mooroopna. You've seen the ADF involved up at Echuca, and now we're in Seymour today and also Rochester today, and a lot of the communities in between. The types of tasks that those ADF members are doing are assisting the local community in the preparation activities that the Commissioner has spoken to there, preparation in the way of levee banks, sandbagging, assisting in relief centres, and also preparing individual homes or community centres for those flood events that are either forecast or impacting those areas. In addition to that, the ADF have been involved in clean-up activities, so as I've described in Rochester today and also in Seymour today going forward, they've been involved in clean-up activities, standing shoulder to shoulder with those supported agencies and working side by side with the community members in order to assist in those clean-up areas where they've been required. In addition to that, Andrew also pointed to the fact that the ADF have deployed here into the State Control Centre, where we'll have some expertise in logistics and also planning to assist with the ongoing efforts and the preparedness going forward into the state. Andrew, the Commissioner alluded to the fact that with that amount of ADF across the state, currently we have in excess of 200 ADF forces on the ground, boots on the ground across those regions, 170 of those involved in the Greater North Eastern region, and then a further 40 that will be involved with the rotary wing and the Taipan helicopters that are also now operating in the state that the Premier alluded to. The types of activities, as I've described, extend well broader than that, and we'll be also poised and agile enough to go forward and assist broader than that. And in commensurate with that, there will be an expansion at the request of the state, and the ADF will grow to a further a full size of 400 ADF personnel deployed here into the state, and there'll be an additional 2 CH-47 or Chinook helicopters that will also be deployed here into Victoria to assist with those isolated communities in those emergency relief and resupply areas as required. Broadly, that's where the ADF is currently deployed. Broadly, they're the tasks that the ADF are actually contributing to. Those tasks are all in support of state agencies and working alongside those state agencies. And if I can just again emphasise what the Premier stated, the initial response and the continued response of those state agencies and those volunteers to allow the ADF to come and stand shoulder to shoulder with those volunteers and support them as they've been working tirelessly right throughout the last week and plus, and throughout this extended event, is what will be our focus, that continued support of those state agencies and in assistance to the communities, of which a lot of those ADF forces are actually from. Some of those ADF forces over the last week have come out of the Albury-Wodonga military area. They live in that community, they're a part of that community, and there's no stronger sense of service to the nation for the type of work that they're doing right now. The same is what's occurring over the course of today and going into the next week with the Seymour and the Gambie area, and that's what we'll continue to do going forward from the ADF. Thank you.
Just to give people a sense of work that ADF are doing and just how grateful we are. ADF are in Seymour ripping carpet out of the school, so out of a primary school, so the kids can get back in there and be learning. They're doing the same in Rochester as well, and so many other tasks, sandbags, as well as moving people and supplies right around the state. So we're deeply grateful to our partnership with the federal government and of course its agencies, chief among them, the Australian Defence Force, and on behalf of all Victorians I thank Brigadier Burr and all of his team for the really important work they're doing. Happy to take any questions you have.
The support for BCE students, does that also extend to students in Maribyrnong and Kensington, for example, or is it just for students in regional Victoria that are still experiencing?
I think it's going to be case by case, so obviously if you've been out of your home, if you're affected, then not to diminish anyone's flood experience, and to be flooded out is a deeply traumatic thing. Even if you're back in relatively quickly, it's very challenging. But I think our VC students in the north of the state face a different challenge, but they're part of a special consideration and a derived score. So a derived score probably more relevant to the north, special consideration for individual circumstances, that might be more relevant for those more metropolitan communities, I would think.
Just to clarify, the cut-off communities, how will those much needed supplies and food be getting to them? Is it the ADF tasked with that role or someone else?
Sure, so it's basically many different agencies providing a single response to those who need it most. So whether it's SES volunteers or other emergency services volunteers, or indeed career staff, maybe the ADF, depending on the nature of the community and just how isolated they are. Safety of those who are coming to provide support is paramount. So part of the work at incident control centres is to work through in a very deliberate, very careful fashion what's needed, how do we best provide people with what they need, how do we do that safely. So it's very much determined on a case-by-case basis. Some communities are isolated and don't have very many people in there, so many people left, there's only a handful there. Other communities, just because of the sheer volume of water, there are many more people that are in their homes. It's not safe to leave, and we're having to provide material support and assistance to them. So it's judged based on the unique circumstances of each different home, each different town. But yes, ADF will be involved, as well as our choppers and every other asset that we can possibly muster. But it's every member of the team all providing a single response, and that's about support and safety. And we'll stand with these communities for as long as we have to, because once we get past this phase and the rain event toward the end of this week, we'll be back at it, cleaning up, chasing that water as it recedes, making sure that every member of the community is supported.
Do you know how many people have left in Kerrang and how many people have left Kerrang?
No, but I can get an update for you.
Will the ADF be offering to evacuate people out of Kerrang, or other agencies?
Well, ADF will be tasked by incident control centres and the state control centre, and they'll perform whatever tasks best align with their skills. So as a brigadier and as Commissioner Crisp indicated, we've had ADF here in the state control centre over a long period of time, floods and fire and everything in between. Sometimes it's very specialist skills about logistics and tasking, people who've got that very important skill set, all the way through to people who are doing airlifts of cargo, of people, and indeed evacuating people. So it'll be based on the best use of the capability we have, and we've never had more capability because our emergency services had done drills, had done exercises, had been out in community, knew that this would be a significant flood season, And now, of course, on top of that, we've got ADF support, and we're deeply grateful for that.
So just to be clear, there could be evacuations onto those isolated communities such as Coorong?
Well, as we indicated, we've already evacuated 700 people, so it stands to reason we'll be evacuating more. And some of those, just to be clear, some of those will be where people simply can't leave for a whole range of complex reasons, and others will be where they have chosen to stay. That's why that's a deeply personal matter. No one's telling people what to do other than saying you're given that advice. The advice is not issued lightly. It's issued for you. It's for your safety. And please, if you're told to leave, then give proper consideration to that. And if you need support to get out, we will provide you with that support. It's better to do that before your home's flooded rather than afterwards. There's no sense of criticism or anything. It's a very, very personal matter. But it's obviously easier. We'll take care of you if you leave your property, and we'll get you back in there as fast as we possibly can. We have done many of those rescues or evacuations, airlifts if you like, and each of them presents a really significant challenge for the person involved as well as the team that has to come to your aid.
In Echuca, a wall was being built through one of the streets. It's 3 metres high and it runs for 3 k's. It's made out of dirt, and construction workers started moving in yesterday to build it.
Yep.
But there are homes on the other side of it.
Which community was that, Chanel? Sorry,
Echuca.
in Echuca. Yes.
There are homes on the other side of it that have just been kind of left to fend for themselves, and they're not sure why the wall's being built. And
Sure. As I understood it, it was about protection. It was about protection of the kind of CBD of Echuca, as I understood it. I can't provide you with any more information than that, unless Andrew might be able to, or I can get you some advice. But sorry, Andrew. No, we'll have someone come back to you, Shana. Sorry, I know about it,
yeah.
And all the various names it's been given, but we're happy to chase that up for you.
When can we-
We're hearing that there's been a lack of support for multicultural communities in terms of interpreters and the like.
Yeah, I
Is that
did.
something
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, there was a multicultural roundtable just held yesterday. The VMC are well engaged, and I think they'll be up there on the ground very soon. Again, my advice pre-flood and during is that every effort is made to provide translated material, culturally appropriate material. I know that's been occurring, but if there's more we have to do, then of course we stand ready to do that. As I said before, Shepparton, not just Shepparton, but Shepparton is a standout when it comes to this point, I think, is a very culturally diverse community. It's stronger for it, it's richer for it. We need to make sure that we are giving everybody the best information so they can make the best decisions. I do hear those comments. We've been doing our level best, but if we have to do better again, then of course we will.
When can we expect that number of ADF personnel to double to 400? Because I guess there has been some comments made in the town of Rochester that they feel like they need more support for the clean up there at the moment.
Sure. Well, look, every community will want to get cleaned up as fast as possible. And it's very, very challenging work. So we will try and have as many resources available as fast as possible. That's got to be done safely. There's 200 on the ground at the moment, and that number will build to 400 in coming days. And ADF personnel will not waste any time being here. And again, I want to thank the ADF for their support. They have been very fast, very quick. They've responded to all the requests we've made, and I'm sure that we'll be able to report progress over coming days.
Would you like to see the SES bring its vaccine mandate to allow more volunteers on the ground?
I really don't understand why a particular member of parliament is raising this point. My advice is that no COVID rules are impacting on any response anywhere. That's my advice. And as far as the SES is concerned, rather than talking about that stuff, I'd simply say this: thank you. Thank you for the amazing work that you are doing. I've met many SES volunteers and career staff in recent days and over my time in public life, and they're focused on protecting their community, and suggestions that COVID rules are inhibiting that are simply wrong. No, you're not making the suggestions. There's a member of parliament who is, and I'm speaking directly to him in saying my advice is that no COVID rules are impacting the response on the ground. That's the advice I have.
There has been a letter circulated from the SES2 members saying that if they weren't vaccinated, they could volunteer. Is your understanding that those rules don't apply? Tiny number of people, and the advice that I have from emergency services is that is not impacting
in any way response on the ground. That is our advice. I tell you what, I really don't. I've answered the question, and I don't want to take away for a moment from the central point when it comes to the SES. And the best thing we can do is to say thank you. That's the best thing to do. This is not about anything other than amazing Victorians working incredibly hard in their own local community, and so many of the SES family that I have met in recent days, their own properties are flooded, and yet they're working so hard. So that's what I'm focused on. If you're going to say something about the SES, best place to start, thank you. Thank you for the amazing work you're doing.
So when you say a tiny amount, are we talking 10 households?
I don't have a number for you, but it is a tiny number. And as I said, I can only say this again. My advice is that no COVID rules are impacting the response in any way. That is the advice that I have. And why, for a politician, that's the number one issue. The number one issue is to say thank you to our SES for all the work that they're doing, and then to provide them and the communities that they're part of and the communities they serve with the sorts of announcements I made yesterday and today, and again other announcements that I'll make tomorrow and probably the day after that too.
Is it possible that a natural disaster zone will be declared for the town of Rochester, and if not, why would that be?
Well, in terms of state of emergency, state of disaster and all of those legal instruments, they come from advice. There's no advice to be taking any of those steps at this point. We will be with the community of Rochester for as long as we have to be, in every way we possibly can, to support them through what is an incredibly difficult time. I have visited Rochester in different roles in my public life many times. It's a great community, a strong and proud community, and they're all doing it very tough at the moment. We'll be there for them, and whatever legal instrument is needed, of course we will use that, but at this stage there's no need for us to go any further than we have now. Some of these, it's just important for people to, just for me to clarify this point again, there are a number of legal instruments. You can declare certain things. What that does is simply transfers extraordinary powers to the Minister for Emergency Services. Doesn't really achieve much more or less than that. And at this stage, there's no advice. We don't need to do that. Things are working very well. Everyone's working together. As I said before, it's many different agencies all focused on one thing, and that's keeping people safe. And then once the immediate danger has passed, and in the immediate wake of that danger, clean up, recovery, rebuilding. That's what we're all focused on.
Farmers say they want a state of emergency or a disaster declared so they can apply for federal and state government's assistance.
There's no state, as Andrew made this point very clearly yesterday, and I'll make it again clearly now, no state government grants or indeed funding that would be joint under the DRFA arrangements are contingent upon any of those issues. And if they were, then the declaration would have been made.
Including federal assistance?
Oh, well, you need to speak to the federal government about that, but I don't believe so, no. I don't believe so. Again, we're speaking with the VFF, we're speaking with farming communities, we're speaking with individual farmers to make sure that they are supported, and I'll have more to say about that soon. But no, it is correct to say that there's a piece of paper somewhere that needs to be signed and suddenly all this additional support will flow. No, that's not the case. And I have heard that around the traps a bit. It's just not right. Every dollar that's needed will be provided. Every program that is needed will be stood up, and we will be there for the long term. This is not a week or a month. This event in different forms will be with those communities, and therefore with all of us. This is the food bowl of our nation. We will all be on this for a long period of time, and those communities need to know that everything's being done for them, and it is. No declarations are missing, and no declarations are necessary. The moment one did become necessary, of course we would make it.
Have you got plans already to fund levies post the floods to really flood-proof some of these towers?
No. The reason I say that is you would want to have very detailed expert advice, all the hydrology, all the engineering, all the analysis of this flood event, because Rich, no two floods are the same. No two communities are the same flood to flood. So we would want to get all manner of advice and expert opinions on that before any decisions were made like that, and those decisions would be made in partnership with local communities, local councils. There'll be a time for that. The time for that is not now.
How many people have moved?
Australia says that out-of-date flood maps and a lack of state coordination means that Victoria is not adequately prepared for flooding. Do we have to review that after this flooding?
I saw that criticism. That criticism was drawn to my attention. I've not read the article in detail or the report. I don't think that's necessarily accurate. What I think you've seen here is an incredible degree of coordinated effort. Our emergency services were out in communities for months, having tens of thousands of conversations at regional events, at the Royal Melbourne Show, at every event possible to try and engage community meetings, 30 or 40 of those, to try and engage with communities, and they did that. And I'm very grateful to everybody who has conducted that community information campaign and all of those who've come and been part of that as well. It's really important. They've done exercises, they've done drills. The notion that there wasn't prep or things weren't coordinated is not accurate. Beyond that, when it comes to issues of planning policy, we're talking about that's a matter for the local council by and large. Again, I just say with the greatest of respect, I understand why the questions are asked, but whether it's levies or flood planning and mapping, there'll be a proper look at this whole event once it's finished. There'll be learnings, of course there always are, just as, for instance, our response to this event has been informed by some of the things that's happened in New South Wales in the last 3 or 4 months. So there's always learnings, but there's a time and a place for those sorts of discussions, and I think there, once we've got through this flood event, we've got people back in their homes, we've done the clean-up, we're doing the rebuilding, that's when we can focus on some of those other issues.
Climate change is clearly exacerbating the impacts of natural disasters. We saw with the COVID-19 pandemic, again, bushfires and now flooding as well. Do we need a comprehensive review of, Victoria's and our country's essentially preparedness for natural disasters?
Well, I would say to you that I've been asked many questions about climate change in recent days, and I have resisted getting into what becomes very quickly a political debate, because I don't think a political debate's what's necessary while people are out of their homes. So you know and understand my views on climate change. You know and understand our record when it comes to, for instance, renewable energy. So I don't need to go and take you through all of that. And when it comes to emergency response, I'd say to you that emergency response across our country is in a constant state of review, because everyone in our emergency services across the whole country is always about learning and improving, doing more, doing better, keeping people safe, being prepared ahead of events, responding during events, and then recovering afterwards. That's that constant sense of improvement. And I must say that Emergency Management Australia, the new body, the older Emergency Management Australia, and some changes that have been made there in recent times, we work very closely with them, just as we do with the ADF and so many others. They're always reviewing. They're always looking to do better, and that's what you want. And that's not just at a national level. That applies in each of the constituent parts that make up a national effort, namely state and territory emergency services and emergency management.
How many people have moved?
Sorry, I'm not walking away, so you can just one at a time is good.
There are concerns that contaminated water is flowing through the Barmah and perhaps out into the bay. Do you have any update on?
I don't, but we can have someone come back to you, whether it be EPA, Melbourne Water, or State Control Centre. We can come back to you on that. There are a number of warnings. We've got a number of communities where there have been breaches in terms of sewerage. There's a number of communities where those warnings are out there. Boil water notices and safe drinking water notices are out there. There's a number of communities where there are ongoing risks. And it's not just in relation to safety, sort of personal injury. There's also public health. There's also hygiene. All of those sorts of issues are really relevant and important as well. On the Maribyrnong and contamination, let me get you some advice.
How many people moved into the Mickleham facility today?
There's only a handful there. I think there's 3 or 4 people that are at Mickleham already, and we've had a number of other people who've expressed an interest to move there. It's a really challenging decision for people to make, to move away from their local community. I think more and more with the passage of time, people just process that practical reality that they're perhaps not going to be able to get back into their house for quite some time. More and more people may make that choice. We're not compelling people to go there or anything like that. It's a choice. It'll work for some. It won't work for everybody. It's a tool that's available. We've got literally hundreds of people in service departments, which I don't think we've talked about before, but we're using every accommodation option we possibly can. And I've taken calls from people who run school camps, for instance, offering us the whole camp. So there'll be lots of local options, but they get exhausted relatively quickly. So then having a fallback position, not for everyone, but for some. So I think those numbers will build, but certainly the first residents are in there, and we've had many more inquiries where people wanted just to be talked through what would it involve, what would I get, how would I be looked after. If you've got a facility there, albeit it's one that's owned by the Commonwealth, but let's use it for however many people finish up using it.
Do you know what community those people are from, and do you expect, Nicholham's a long way from northern Victoria, do you expect that might be an obstacle
Not
to
that,
the practicality of
yeah.
some people taking it off?
Yeah, obviously closer to Seymour than it is to some of the other communities we've been to visit, but look, this will be very much on individual circumstances. If your home needs to be essentially rebuilt, or even if there was less damage, but you're told, despite the best efforts, there's going to be no sewerage, no power, and might be compromised water for weeks, all of a sudden, a decision that no one would want to make now, no one wants to leave the community that they've helped to build. But once that starts to become clear and more definitive timelines are put on it, then I wouldn't be surprised if some who've made an inquiry make that difficult decision to move away from their community, even for a medium term, a few weeks, while some of those services are reconnected, for instance. But distance is obviously a factor. The most important thing is it's not for everybody. No one has to go there. We'll try and provide every other option we possibly can closer to home. But for some people it'll work, as is evidenced by the fact that the first residents have moved in. I just want to again make the point, three meals a day, support, wraparound services, mental and physical health, pets can go there, activities for kids. We'll make it we'll make it the best possible environment we can, just as I know people are doing the same sort of work, doing their very best to make relief centres and other emergency accommodation the best that it can possibly be.
Just on sandbags, how's the distribution of sandbags working, and are you confident that every community that needs them has sufficient access?
We have some additional sandbags coming from different parts of Australia as well. We share ours, they share theirs. I think we've all learnt that we absolutely understand through our own experiences as families, as communities, when everybody wants the same thing at the same time, then it does get challenging. We've seen that right throughout these last couple of years. I think we're confident we're going to have enough sandbags and then we get it distributed as quickly as we possibly can based on forecasts, based on the needs that are fed back to us from those in our emergency services that are very much at a local level.
I mean, I just ask another.
Oh, sorry, can I just... Sorry, Bruce. Are you able to clarify who did the flood modelling which is used as the basis to issue warnings? Was it Melbourne Water, the SES, or the Bureau of Meteorology? Do you know?
In terms of flood warnings that are provided in this event?
In this event, yes.
Well, warnings are provided by the State Controller.
Oh, the flood modelling.
Modelling that sits behind it.
That activates the
I want to give you a completely accurate answer. I could make some assumptions. I won't do that, but I'll come back to you with an if you'd like to.
Sorry.
The Bureau's in here, so the answer is all three, I expect.
Yeah, so it's Melbourne Water. And Melbourne Water, we've got a number of liaison officers here. We've got Michael from the Bureau, but we also have Melbourne Water here. So it is Melbourne Water, but there is discussion with the Bureau. But ultimately, in relation to the warnings that we put about evacuate now, it comes back to the incident response or state response controller.
And is it automated or based on peaks? Was it automated based on peaks, or was it a manual process? Sorry, I'm just really...
Yeah, I think if we're going to get into sort of that much detail, I'd be happy to sort of follow up and provide a more fulsome answer.
Can I just ask one other matter that's not flood related, if I could?
Sure.
The three integrity agencies have put forward a proposal that their funding is decided by a tribunal rather than the government of the day.
I saw that.
Is that something that you would Is it only?
Well, the Treasurer, I think, has provided some on-the-record comments today. We'll have a look at that. We want to get some departmental advice on that, how that would work. But of course, funding for those agencies will be determined by the budget process. The budget will be delivered by whomever is in government next May. So there'll be plenty of time for us to get advice on that. If in fact we're given that great gift on the 26th of November.
Would you, though, support in principle the idea of Parliament setting the funding, not being set by the government of the day?
Well, Simon, budget bills pass the Parliament. Budget bills pass both houses of the Parliament. So the Parliament does set the budget of every agency across the whole state. If you didn't have the numbers in the Parliament because you hadn't won an election, then you wouldn't be writing a budget for anything. So the best way to go, just there's no quarrel here, they've got a view. I think we should get advice on that. We should have a close look at it. We will, if we're the government, and we can look at that advice. And they're looking for a guarantee. What I can guarantee, they've got 50% more funding today than they had when I became Premier, and they'll get more money next year. But budgets are all about balancing all different sorts of priorities, whether it's emergency services, hospitals, road, rail, different agencies. But let's have a look at what they've put forward. That's what the Treasurer's indicated today. Let's have a look at that, and then hopefully that advice can inform the budget next year.
Well, the agencies don't want a part of the budgeting process, and I guess that's what they're calling for. They want it completely independent of the budget process of the government of the day. And I know you say Parliament passes the bill, but it's a government decision. Do you think?
No, it's not. It's a anyway. We can have a debate about it.
Governments make choices.
And parliaments make laws. Governments don't make laws. Parliaments make laws, Maya. And
we're getting into an esoteric debate about government's role, parliament's role.
I didn't come here for an esoteric debate. I came here to advise people on what we're doing to keep them safe. But in any event, there's a proposal there. Let's get some advice on it. The other thing too, we've got a new commissioner. We're going to have an interim commissioner, and we're going to go through the normal process. Sorry, the government of the day, whoever that is next year. We'll go through a process. I think you probably want to sit down with a brand new head of an integrity agency and have a chat to them about what they want. I think that'd just be common courtesy.
What's your position though on an independent funding stream for these integrity agencies? Do you think that it is appropriate, or do you think governments should make those budgetary decisions?
Again, with respect, I think we're kind of going around in circles. Rich has asked me exactly that question a moment ago, and the key point is this: they've got a proposal, absolutely fine. Let's get some advice. Let's wait and see what that advice is. Let's have a close look at that. Let's, for instance, consult with the new IBAC head. I think that'd be the smart thing to do, be the appropriate thing to do, and then we can see what informs the budget next year. We've also got the small matter of who's delivering the budget next year, which will be determined by not by me or you, but by the people of our state.
You mentioned animal welfare, and you're going to have an update.
Yeah, I'm just working through a range of ag and animal welfare issues, as well as some other matters. We're just tidying that up, and there's a cabinet committee meeting tonight, so we'll sign off on a range of different things that I'll be back to announce tomorrow.
The chair of Melbourne Water, John Waits, yesterday recused himself from playing a part in Melbourne Water's inquiry or review of the flood in the Barmah because he was water minister at the time. Melbourne Water itself played a role in some of the decisions around that wall that was built around Flemington Racecourse. Do you still stand by your comments yesterday that they don't have any conflict of interest?
What I indicated was that I had confidence, and I remain confident, that they'll be able to conduct an appropriate review. Now, they are a statutory authority, and they may well, out of an abundance of caution, to make sure that there's no real or even perceived issue with that. I'm certain that they'll look to get external advice. They'll do that work in good time, and it'll be there for all of us to look at. I think the chair's made the appropriate decision, and I think, well, I'm certain that Melbourne Water can do this work, and can do it properly, and then report on it once that work is finished.
Even though they may be looking into decisions that they themselves are responsible for?
Well, that's the point about them taking steps to have an external advisory panel, or even perhaps an external firm. All of those details don't matter for Melbourne Water. They are, as I said, a statutory authority. They take these matters very seriously. There was a process right back to 2004. There were consultants, there was experts, there was all manner of different things. I think they've demonstrated in lots of different ways that run an appropriate process, and this will be no different.
I mean, you've toured a lot of the state over the last few days. On these visits, have you had a chance to directly meet with the flood victims on the ground? And I guess what are the key messages they're telling you?
I've met with emergency services. I've met with some people whose homes have been flooded. And the reason you go is to look people in the eye and ask them, have you got everything you need? Those who are running, those who are coordinating, those who are, if you like, on the ground, doing the very best of work. I'll keep doing that. I'll keep meeting with them. There's a couple of things out of my Shepparton visit earlier today that on the way back I was texting with colleagues to try and follow up. Hopefully we can resolve some of those matters. As I said to you the other day, I've spoken with a number of other members of Parliament, not just from our party but from other parties. I'll continue to do that, continue to speak to as many people as I can. But the focus has been on making sure that our emergency services, so the local version of what you see behind me here, and all their partners have got everything they need. So we're going to keep on doing that. But it does bring home just how resilient, just how strong, just how amazing our regional Victorian communities are. But there are limits, and this is a really significant event, and that's why we have to all step up and support them in any way that we can.
The Liberal candidate from Mulgrave yesterday basically accused you of murdering 800 people. Do you think that's appropriate, and do you consider it defamatory?
I made some comments about that matter yesterday, and I'd direct you to those. If there's no other issues, thank you all very much.